Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for dropping in on Dr. Judy WTF. And tonight's episode is titled Alcohol, the Not So Innocent Human Disconnect. And as a specialist in healing human disconnect, I could talk to the problem of alcohol as a form of human disconnect, and we're going to get right into it. But I do want to read you some not so fun facts. So, a little bit about alcohol. I'm taking this from Google. Alcohol significantly impacts the brain, affecting communication pathways. So, being that you want to have a healthier mental life, communication is definitely affected. Short term effects include impaired judgment, coordination, and memory. Long term, heavy drinking can lead to more serious issues like brain damage, cognitive decline, and increased risk of mental health problems. Okay, so we're going to see if this is worth it. Daily alcohol consumption has a profound impact on the liver. So now we're talking about the body here. It can cause a spectrum of potential effects ranging from mild fatty liver to severe alcoholic hepatitis and cirrhosis of the liver. The liver is the primary site for alcohol metabolism, particularly vulnerable to alcohol-related damage. And then the third thing I wanted to read to you, I think that's about it on the facts here. Fact is that it is a human disconnect. Why? I'm going to dive into it in more detail, but generally when a sober brain talks to an inebriated brain, they really are on different wavelengths. Okay, so just in a general sense, they're just not on the same page. This is a call-in show, everyone, and please feel free to do so. 323-524-2599. And here at the Psychological Healing Center, we mind map the past so that you can get into your future, and then we mind map your future so that you can manifest your best life. Again, we've been doing episodes on mind mapping your past childhood wounds and then taking you into mind mapping your future, which Dr. Perry and I have worked to create. And so those of you who have more or less, maybe more than fixed their past, they could start to begin to manifest a better future. Those who are stuck on horrible childhood wounds that infect them, their life, and infect their negative core beliefs may have a little bit more work to do on mind mapping their past. So either way, reach out to us, Psychological Healing Center. The call-in number again, 323-524-2599. And let's take a look at alcohol through the lens of what it does to social connection or lack thereof, and what it is that it is really feeding here. So let's go back to the mind map and mind map the wounds of childhood. So let's see what they are. So if you put up the panels, you can see that the first panel is the wound of childhood. Of course, my artwork is a metaphor for the wounds, which are represented by the shadows that overshadow your light, which is really the best of your best. So it's your highest manifestation. The shadows bring you down cognitively, they bring you down energetically, they bring you down spiritually, they bring you down physically, they even bring you down financially because it can cost a lot of money to drink, not to mention DUIs and entanglements with the law and accidents and so on and so forth. And so you can see that these wounds of childhood, which I delve into basically 5 or 6 of them, which is physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, emotional, physical neglect, smothering, controlling, and of course, narcissistic parents who lack empathy and don't connect with their children very well at all. So the point of panel 1 is to illuminate the darkness, which is what you've been shadowed over with, and your light, which is your manifestation of the very best self that you can be, and see where these shadows punch what I call a hole in the soul. What is a hole in the soul? A hole in the soul is a pain point that needs to be medicated, avoided, something that creates a distress, a dis-ease within the psyche, and also relates to the body and the spirit. So as you develop this hole in the soul from human disconnects of the nature that I described, especially when you're not connected to emotionally by parents who lack empathy and have a high degree of narcissism and put their own needs before you, it cracks your lens of perception. It actually cracks you up, so to speak, and creates what I call panel 2 reactions, which are reactions in the amygdala. So my second panel is a metaphor for cracking up. It's also a metaphor for the pain that is created from human disconnect. And you can see the pain is represented by the red throbbing sores or reactions, and then the cracked glass, which is a representation of something broken within and shattered within. And these shatterings create what we call, from an emotional regulation point of view, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So those of you who have to deal with your emotional dysregulation because your parents don't regulate you and because life has wounded you, I have an awfully hard time doing that, because we need our parents, our primary caregivers, to soothe us, to calm us down. Going back to John Bowlby attachment theory, what do we need to have a human psyche that's healthy? Is we need touch, we need eye contact, skin contact, consistency, mirroring, the ability to have parents that put their needs aside in order to fulfill on your needs. So these are just the basic things that we need as infants to thrive emotionally. And if we don't thrive very well emotionally, then we encode all kinds of bad stuff into our psyche. So if we go to panel number 3, we could see that this bad stuff includes negative core beliefs. So there is my metaphor for the DNA strand, which represents encodings, but not very healthy encodings. Encodings like, I'm not good enough, I'm not powerful enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not special. The worst ones that I've heard is, I wish you were never born. These kinds of things land in panel 3. So you could see that panels 1, 2, and 3 are the encoding of the pain. And so let's keep alcohol in mind. What does alcohol do? Obviously, it numbs us, okay? So then when something in life triggers us, and we go into panels 4, 5, 6, let me show you those. So panel 4, 5, 6 is the chaos, the chaos of life that happens when you get fired, or you go through a breakup, or you have a horrible day, or somebody insults you, or the world goes awry and you're stressed out of your gourd dealing with current events, which we all are. And you could see that this dysregulation lands us in a human disconnect. So now not only are we disconnected from our family of origin, our parents, our caregivers, but we're also now disconnected from ourselves, and we have no direction. So we're neither north, south, east, west. We're sort of flying off the handle, if you will, not feeling really good, not feeling really good. So you could see in panel 4, it's loaded with toxicity. It's loaded with disconnect. The DNA strands are no longer integrated. They are loose, kind of like loose wires, and there's no structure here. And so we are therefore, in panel 4, at the effect of whatever hits us, whatever triggers us. So let's go to panel 5, which is where alcohol lives. Okay, so here is the home of alcohol and alcohol use and abuse. And what is alcohol? It is a defense mechanism. And so when we don't feel well, do we want to feel the pain? Obviously, we don't want to feel the pain. And the more we don't want to feel the pain, the more we want to numb the pain with what I call drugs, sex, and rock and roll, alcohol being one of them. And sometimes they all kind of come together. You drink more, and then you have more attraction to porn, and then your relationships become more alienated. And so this is sort of like the alienation defense mechanism panel. So people who don't want to feel the feelings of the chaos, they don't want to feel their panel 1 wounds, they don't want to feel dysregulated, they don't want to deal with horrible negative core beliefs that make them feel like they're worthless and lack self-esteem and all of that. Well, there's an easy and quick solution, isn't there? And the more you drink, the more you hole up into defense mechanism alcohol. And what I find very disconcerting is that alcohol is treated as though it's this really innocent thing to do. It's traditional. Let's have a glass of wine. Let's go out for a glass of wine. Let's have a glass of wine after work. Let's have a glass of wine during the party. Let's have a glass of wine to unwind. Let's have a glass of wine or other forms of alcohol. And so it's treated as though it's perfectly okay. However, now more and more neuroscientists are saying that even a little bit of alcohol is extremely damaging to the brain. Dr. Ieman talks about it. If you want, Google him. He has some important things to say about the brain function and what alcohol does to the brain. And I think you need to all get psychoeducated, even if you're drinking a little bit. You want to know what the Freud is going on with the effects of alcohol, both on your psyche, your body, your spirit, all of this, because we're made of mind, body, and soul, aren't we? So let's talk about it as a disconnect. Why is it a disconnect? You think that it's a social connect because, you're more loquacious when you drink and hey buddy, how you doing? And looser and you want to socialize with people. So in that regard, you might look at it as a connection. But what are you really connecting to and who are you really connecting to? Other people who are vibrating at a lower wavelength, the alcohol wavelength, which is not as, let's say, evolved as a brain that is free and clear of drugs and is available to be authentic and available to be vulnerable and available to feel pain and process through pain and grow through pain. So people who are stuck in panel 5 are often very immature because whenever we use defense mechanisms to the point where we don't grow, we get stuck at that phase of development. So going back to phases of development, there are all kinds of psychologists who've described the oral phase and the anal phase and all kinds of phases of maturity. And so what happens is these phases get stuck. Okay, so there's no progress. So people who use alcohol to fill in the hole in the soul never really learn to regulate their emotions. And we have a question. So sure, go ahead.
Yes, actually, we have two questions, and it says, my partner and I only seem to communicate well when drinking together. Is that a red flag?
I think it is. I'd like you to do an experiment and even just go one day without it. To me, what it speaks to is that there are pain points in the relationship that are way too uncomfortable to address in a naked, sober form. And so you need a little bit of that gold liquid or clear liquid to just kind of get the party started. It does lessen resolve. So people say it's the truth serum. So if you drink, you might say things that are truth. However, they may not be said kindly, or may not be said in a way that is progressive. So if you tell somebody, the truth is I've never been in love with you ever, and the truth is I'm not attracted to you. The truth is I've been having an affair. I mean, okay, great, you're telling truths, but irresponsibly so. Okay, if you really want to talk to somebody, you might want to enter into a real conversation. And so alcohol numbs you to the point where you could say the truth, but you're not really dealing with the mature level of conversation that sobriety would bring to the table if you were to lay it out on the table. So sure, I love the idea of lower your responsiveness. Okay, so maybe it'll take the edge off, but how much of the edge is taken off, and what is actually being said that's not really being said in an authentic, non-inebriated way, which makes us more vulnerable. So basically what I'm saying is that the alcohol takes away a lot of the vulnerability, even though it looks like it is allowing us to loosen up and have loose tongue and say whatever we want. There's this shield around us that is dialing down the hurt. And I think it's always better to deal with things that are hurting authentically. If they hurt, you could say, this is really hurting me, and feel the impact of that pain. Alcohol will not let you feel the impact of the pain. Does that answer the question? Give me a nod, anything in the chat room.
I mean, it makes sense to me, but we'll see if they respond in the chat room. So we'd love to hear if that makes sense, for
I
sure.
mean, I get it. I've had conversations after a few glasses of drinks, and sure, like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to tell you. But sometimes you don't even remember what you said, and you certainly don't say it in a way that is well thought out oftentimes, and that could get you in a lot of trouble.
We have another question, but I have a question for you. Personal
Sure.
note. I grew up in a very alcoholic family, but I never drank. I never been drunk. I've had sips once in, years ago. I just never liked it. Why does it make other people that drink feel uncomfortable to be around me, not the vice versa?
Because, okay, several things. They know in the heart of hearts that they're using a substance to get through life, and that weakens their position. So
Hmm.
I think it's hard for them to admit the fact that you're running on optimal fuel, which is life force,
Right.
okay? And they're running on a very compromised fuel, which is the alcohol. And that already puts them in a one-downsmanship position that, you know, um, you can do this, you can do life without alcohol. So it's kind of like you fly higher, you fly better, you fly stronger, and they need this crutch to kind of limp through their emotions. So that's already going to make them uncomfortable. The second thing is that there's an automatic disconnect. So it's sort of like music and cacophony. Okay, so when you're in music and when you're in harmony with somebody, you're you're vibrating, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
tones, your frequency level is syncing up. When you are talking to somebody on alcohol, or worse, talking to an alcoholic who's severely inebriated, you guys are just not syncing up. And so there's no progress. There might be Muzak, at best. You know what Muzak is, that nice elevator. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, yeah, yeah. You like the beer? Yeah, I like that other brand. Like you might have good superficial talk and a jolly good time over a few drinks. It's just that there's nothing of quality necessarily being said and discussed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I've had that many times where As soon as they find out I don't drink, they're just like they don't know what to do. They don't know what to say, and I'm like,
They don't. They don't. I'm struggling with that personally. I have a very dear friend, and he's got some amazing qualities, but I find that when this person drinks, and I'm telling you, the first thing the person does when he gets to my house is go for the alcohol,
mm,
which he brings, by the way, because I don't really carry much alcohol in the house. It's an immediate repellent for me. The smell, the
mm-hmm,
twinkle, the fake twinkle in the eyes,
yeah,
the glazed look, the phony smiles, like what are you smiling about? Like, yeah, I'm
right,
smiling, I'm happy, I'm high. Like, that's not a smile. That's not, you know how they talk about fake smiles versus authentic smiles. If
right,
you're really smiling,
mm-hmm,
your eyes are smiling. Well, an alcoholic's eyes are not smiling, they're twinkling from being glazed over. That's how I see it. And it's not a connect at all.
no, I agree, and even out here in California, I used to when I moved here, when I say I drink or I don't drink, people always thought I was in recovery, and I was like, no, I just
Yeah, that's true. People would think that because you're right. Go ahead.
no, that was it. I was just saying it's. I always thought it was funny because I have to say I don't drink and I've never drank. I have to add that instead of just saying no, I'm not in recovery. So
And by the way, I know you haven't seen Tony, but he really looks well and his skin glows and he's very healthy and he
oh,
goes to the gym a lot and right, Tony?
I
I mean,
do.
you do.
Yeah, isn't
You
it
do.
called our body is a temple? So
Yeah. So that's another thing is that I think spiritually, speaking of spiritually, right? You're either spiritual or you're spiritually induced.
right, and that's why
Which
they
one
call
do
it
you want to be?
spirits.
Right, it's spirit, but it's a fake spirit,
Yeah,
okay? It's
yeah,
a spirit from the dark side. And so that's why when you're connecting, even if you're meditating, you're not going to meditate when you're high on alcohol because you're trying to meditate and connect with the universe or
right.
connect with God or higher power or sit there with a bottle of vodka and pray because now you're really disconnecting from your spirit to your dark side of your spirit, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And actually, this was one of the questions. It says, um, if I want to cut back on drinking, how do I start rebuilding real emotional connection, especially with myself?
I love that question. That's such an honorable question. That already says that you want to cut back on drinking because you're realizing that what I'm talking about holds truth to you. So that's a beautiful thing. And so you want to expose your pain rather than cover up your pain. So number one, I think that we need to make friends with our pain, instead of saying, oh, no, 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 no pain. Like today, I got a massage that was very deep, and at first I was recoiling and oh, don't go there and and then I thought no, 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 go into the pain because the more pain I experience on that massage table, the more release I'll experience off of the massage table. So it's the same thing. You want to make friends with your pain because your pain is informative. If somebody hurt your feelings, if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling disconnected, you want to feel that so that you can actually do something about it, more than just medicate it and block it from your very existence. So I think if you truly want to do this, several ways. Okay, I used to have a stop smoking clinic called Habit Breakers. And by the way, I'm going to be bringing back my book, Kick It, Stop Smoking, Cold Turkey, or Gradual Withdrawal. The choice is yours. I'll be doing a show on that in the near future, and that'll be available as a book to you guys. I can't tell you when because I'm obsessive compulsive and I just want it to look right. Although I do have versions of it. I think it's on Amazon somewhere, but I just want to make this really well done. So, when you kick a habit, the first thing you want to do is rid yourself of the substance. So you don't want to keep it around because it's too tempting. However, you want to do some fun substitutes. So in your refrigerator, you can have things like Perrier water and lime, or you can have coconut water, or you can have healthy protein drinks or juices, or you can just substitute it with plain water and lemon if you like. And remember that part of drinking is an oral gratification. So if you put your soda water, let's say your Perrier water, in a pretty crystal glass, and you put some mint on top and you squeeze a lemon in it. And if you want to sweeten it, you could put a little bit of stevia or monk sugar so that you don't spike your glucose, which I'm very conscious of, and enjoy that. I also know that there are some non-alcoholic beverages out there that they've been advertising. I'm going to look into that because I don't want to be drinking something with a lot of um, horrible ingredients in it. So, be cautious of those things. Um, but I think number one, just sit with yourself and sit in the pain. Maybe sit with a glass of water or soda water. Um, Maybe have a conversation. Maybe do one day, one day without alcohol and see what that's like. And then if you're running from your feelings, then close your eyes, take a break, and breathe. And a good way to breathe is to just inhale for a few seconds, hold for 4 or 5 seconds, and then a long exhalation, and see what comes up, because your mind and your body and your soul are trying to communicate with you. The alcohol is actually blocking the communication because the alcohol is fear based. Your emotions are based on authenticity, love, truth, growth. Alcohol is fear, constriction, repression, disconnect. Okay, so if you start associating alcohol not only physically with negative things, but if you start associating alcohol with lack of psychological growth, lack of spiritual growth, then you can kind of like take an inventory on what is the price tag that you pay for drinking alcohol. I read you some things about cognitive decline and liver dysfunction, and then you could take a whole inventory about how much you pay for drinking and any DUIs that you've incurred, any attorneys that you've had to pay because of your DUIs, anything, any friendships that have been broken because you've said too much in a state of disconnect and in the state of loose tongue. Okay, so all of these things take a toll on your life. So I think that people just drink and they don't really consider the price tag that they're engaging in because it feels so good that they think that it's so rewarding. And remember, partial reinforcement is the number one strongest reinforcement on the planet. So if you have a lot of negative experiences with alcohol, but you also have some really great highs associated with it, then you're going to go for the intermittent reinforcement. You're going to remember the good. You're going to forget the bad also because you're cognitive declining, so you're probably forgetting everything, but you're going to especially forget the bad because you're always searching for the high. So it's that search for the high that takes precedence over the logical inventory of the effects of alcohol. Okay, we have a call. Awesome. Thank you. Hello.
Hi, is that Dr. Judy?
It is. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. And what name would you like me to call you by? And you can make one up if you want.
Okay, so I'll go with John.
John. Okay, John. So what brings you to this phone call?
Actually, I'm a big fan of your work. I bought your book, Healing Disconnect, a long time ago.
Okay.
and I've been listening to your videos, and I really, your book was very simple to understand and just saved my life and saved the people that I'm also with. My family, my sister, her children. She's recently divorced. We came from a very dysfunctional family, not aware of psychological trauma and everything. And so, yeah, you've been a great source of insight and light, I would say.
Thank you so much. That really, really means a lot to me because there's nothing that I can think of better than being an influencer in the sense of positively influencing a person's life in the next generation. I just can't think of a better feeling. So I really, really appreciate your acknowledgement.
Yeah, I mean, and also, yeah, thank you. And also the simplicity of your work, is not very complicated at all. It's like, okay, this is what you have, this is what you've been through, and
Yep.
this is how you do it. And it's
Yep.
very, very, and yeah.
Yeah, because, I went through so much schooling and so many theories, and it made me dizzy. And then being a traditional psychologist and talking and talking and talking and years of talking, oh my God, it was making me a headache. So I thought, if making me a headache, and it's probably making my patients a headache, and I've got to simplify it. So it's kind of like my E=mc² psychology formula, if you will, the mind map.
Yeah, and the mind map is just like I said, is just very straightforward. And I have a degree in psychology myself, and it's very complicated if you don't put things in perspective, if you don't organize it, if you don't make it very how can I put it, in a very summarized, in a very perspective way, it will be very, very hard for people to understand it clearly.
Exactly.
And your book and the map, yeah.
Well, I'm sure you experienced that. May I ask, what kind of work do you do? What line are you in?
Actually, I work for myself. I do something called PCR, which is like it's not related to psychology, but I wanted to work in this field.
Okay.
And it helped me a lot. Like I said, if it wasn't for the insight I've gained, throughout the years, especially your work and the knowledge I've gained, I don't know where I would have been. I would have been more addicted. I would have been in trouble. And so now my sister also benefits from my knowledge. So my brother and everyone around me, I gave her your book as well. She's unfortunately recently divorced, and because she was living with a covert narcissist.
Oh, okay.
She gave him chances, and she understood now that it really affected her life. For 16 years, she didn't know her problems and all the psychological problems, all the psychological manipulation, all the even health issues that she was dealing with.
Very big time, because when you're living or married to a narcissist, especially when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, and especially if you're a people pleaser, they will suck you dry emotionally, physically, spiritually, and it's just something that actually makes you physically sick. I can't tell you how many people complain of backache, headache, and all kinds of disease because of this vampiring effect, as I like to call it. Um, so, go ahead and tell me why you're calling particularly about the alcohol topic.
Right. Okay. Actually, I'm not calling regarding alcohol because I don't have problem with it and I don't even drink. But the reason I called is I wanted your advice on. I have my sister's children, my two beloved nephews. 15 and 13. And the 15 nephew is very intelligent for his age. He's been through a lot, and I don't want him to repeat the generational trauma that we've gone through. I befriended him. I love him. He loves me.
Yes.
So my question to you is, is it appropriate now to give him your book? Because he's very intelligent and smart, like I said.
Definitely, definitely. And I've been wanting to get this into the hands of children. As a matter of fact, in my original video, the 9-panel mind map video series, which is still available very inexpensively, I have my grandson in there explaining the mind map. So it's what I love about it.
I'll look at that one.
Yeah,
Definitely.
for sure, for sure. Okay, and you can contact me and make sure that you get it. And it's pretty inexpensive at this point. I really lowered the price point on it. I don't know what, but it's on my website. And the thing
Right.
is that with the mind map, just to give you a little hint, panel 1, 2, 3. This is how my 4-year-old grandson shrunk it down. He analyzed panel 1. Grandma, that's the boo-boo, okay? It's true, it's the boo-boo. The boo-boo hurts,
Right.
and then it makes you feel bad about yourself. Okay? So that's how easy it is for children to understand. Doesn't matter what age, what race, what religion, what anything. It just speaks to the human being because it's visual and easy to understand. So another thing about so making it relevant to the topic of alcohol, one thing we know for sure about children is what they see you do is what they're going to copy to do. Okay? So that's why it's important for your nephew. Is that your nephew, you said?
Yeah, these are my nephews, yes.
Okay, to learn the mind map because, at this age, they're exposed to alcohol and all kinds of drugs. And if they've had any hole in the soul, which we all have on some level, okay, it's easy to be influenced by their friend to fill it. So that if they can understand how to avoid stepping into panel number 5, defense mechanisms, alcohol being one of them, then you know what you're really doing. And another day I'm going to talk about smoking too, which is a very big topic of mine. Whenever you help somebody to recognize their defense mechanisms and be authentic with themselves, you're doing them a big service because you're helping them deal with their own pain authentically without numbing it, okay? And also you're helping to help them to grow. And this is a very big deal to be a teenager because you don't want to have arrested development, okay?
Right. Yeah. I'll do that because I thought maybe I'm going to overwhelm him by all the psychological knowledge because I want him to be aware from now. As these trauma will affect your life for until you become aware of it.
Exactly.
So I wanted to, yeah.
And if you do get that video, the 9-panel mind map video, and then I have another one, Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. Maybe you could show it on the screen, the two. That's the last one I did, Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. And then there's another one called the 9-panel mind map journey.
Right.
Somewhere in there. Maybe you could start with the first one and then later on move to Healing from Narcissistic Abuse.
I will do that. Thank you so much, Dr. Judy, for your work. You're changing lives. I'm calling you from the UK, and it's been a pleasure to really talk to you, and definitely I'll do that. Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, John. Take care.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, so this is not just about you, it's about the next generation. Remember, be the cause of healing human disconnect so that you can be living the best life you can live, better outcomes for your life, and pay it forward to the next generation. So if you drink, if you smoke, if you do any kinds of substance use, your children are way more likely to copycat that behavior and do it themselves. So you can't sit around and complain that your son or your daughter or your niece or nephew or whoever is smoking and drinking and doing drugs when you're sitting there with your vodka, your martini, your whiskey or beer or whatever, because it's really the same thing. I mean, I know the substances are different, but the 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 intention, okay? And one of the things I talk about in my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, first thing I talk about is the consciousness. And you can, by the way, pick that up from Amazon if you want a PDF version. You can pick it off my website. Uh, but consciousness is causal. So if you come from the consciousness of denial, you're going to get drugs, sex, rock and roll defense mechanisms, alcohol, of course, included. If you come from the consciousness of truth and authenticity and vulnerability, then you're going to elevate yourself, even if it feels painful to deal with your feelings and to deal with truth conversations with others. And speaking of truth conversations, I have something in the book that all of you should read called The Peaceful Healing Dialogue. And the Peaceful Healing Dialogue, which is in the book, teaches you how to have a dialogue without blowing the bridge, without disconnecting. And unfortunately, when you're talking, dialoguing under the influence of alcohol, then you're not having really a truth dialogue, even though they call alcohol a truth serum. You're just kind of spilling your feelings, but you're not really processing them, and you're not really tuned in to being a receptacle of what the other person on the other end has to say about it or feel about it, more importantly. So you might think that you're having an honest conversation, but what's lacking is that it's not coming from a causal point. It's coming from the wound. It's probably coming from your reactions. You know, if you're speaking about your pain under the influence, you're probably in a reactive, activated form uh, because your childhood wounds are triggered. And so that's not where the conversation needs to stem from. It has to stem from integration, where you integrate the feelings, you understand your feelings, you're honest and authentic about your feelings, and you're sharing your feelings with somebody who's equally as interested and receptive. And then you can both have an elevated, synergistic conversation that will take you to another level of empathy, connection, raising each other up mentally, spiritually, psychologically. Okay, does that make sense? One is evolution. So let's jump to different panel. Here, let's go to panel number 6. Let's not skip over that one. So panel number 6 is when alcohol and you break down. Okay, you end up at a facility, or worse, you're in an accident because of an alcohol related accident. Your marriage breaks up over it, or friendships are breaking down because of this. And sometimes when people break down, they use it as an opportunity, or they're forced, at least at the beginning, to break through. Okay, so breakdown can be a breakthrough if you make it so. So listen to that again. If you make it so. If you're just going to use it as an excuse to go lower and lower, you'll end up in the gutter. But if you make it an excuse or a reason to elevate and be done with it, in other words, the old system has to collapse for a new one to be built up. And so let's move to panel number 7 so we could see what's possible. So panel 7, if two people, let's say the blue person and the yellow person, are talking, and there's no alcohol, there's no barrier between them, there is light, growth, progress, understanding, connection, authenticity, synergy. Okay, that's what's possible. But if the two people are inebriated, or one is inebriated and the other one's sober, They're on different wavelengths. There's no truth, there's no connection, there's no authenticity, there's no real vulnerability and growth. Okay, see the difference? So I think it's important that people who don't drink hang around people who don't drink. It's just healthier that way. So the whole idea is to work through your defense mechanisms so that you can be vulnerable and protective at the same time. I call it a semi-permeable membrane. So going back to panel 5, you don't want to close everybody out. You don't want to open up to everybody and be boundaryless. You want to be a semi-permeable membrane, letting in the good and keeping out the bad, because that's how we stay balanced, right? Like a cell in the human body. We let in the good stuff, we keep out the bad stuff. And so through this process, we can paradigm shift into panel number 7, 8, 9. So going back to 7, now you are seeing the light, you're reconnected with it, you're looking for synergistic relationships so that the healing process, right? So that is a synergistic relationship. That's the only thing that I would be interested in having in my lifetime. People who add to me and I add to them. 1 + 1 is greater than 2. Me and another person enhances their life, or that other person also enhances my life. And so that is what we want to bring to the world, is we want to enhance each other, and eventually we want to push each other up the evolutionary ladder, which is panel number 8, metaphorically speaking. So if you look at panel number 8, you've now gone through the trials and tribulations of dealing with your emotions, the ugly ones included. Now you're maturing, you have more mental and physical and spiritual health, and now you want to climb and evolve, and you want to do it with like-minded people. So you're pushing yourself up the evolutionary ladder, and each one is helping and being helped. So it's a process of teamwork, and you could see that instead of chaos, there's clarity. The water is a metaphor for clarity and health and a clean slate and a fresh start. And so through this evolutionary process, which obviously doesn't include an inebriated state, because then you might fall off the ladder, physically and proverbially speaking, you can't climb very well when you're drunk. And so you want to just keep rising and rising and rising in health. So one of the things I say in my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, is that health begets health. Any other questions in the chat room?
There is one question. I mean, it kind of goes back a lot, many generations, but it says, why is drinking so normalized in our culture, even though it's often leads to emotional distance in relationships?
Well, I mean, the first thought that flashed into my mind was, if you refer to the Bible, you see it ceremonially incorporated into different rituals and, and so on. The grapes of, um, you know, I guess on some level it could be used in a celebratory manner. You drink to good health, or at a wedding you toast the bride and the groom. Um, yeah, I mean, in very small moderation, and I'm talking about very small, it might have a small place, except that when it becomes this defense mechanism, and you'll know it because you will literally stop growing um, psychologically. You just will stop growing, and you will keep leaning on it, like, you get more and more broken, and it's sort of like the broken leaning on a broken system. But I think it's got a long history. Culturally, different cultures use alcohol in different ways. But, I've always said, if you have a a choice between what's culturally correct and what is correct for your mental, spiritual, and um, emotional well-being, I will choose that. I've always been interested in creating systems that work for the human race, not for one culture or another. That's why I created the mind map originally. It was called Join the Human Race, Healing Global Disconnect. And then I went micro on it because I saw that the system was just as relevant to healing human disconnect. And it's hard to heal global disconnect when you don't heal human disconnect. It's hard to um, get countries to agree and create synergy when we can't even have synergy with ourselves or our significant others. So that's why I went from micro to macro, but I'm still very passionate about creating a humane race with principles of the mind map that point to the direction of healing and point in the direction of synergy, global synergy. By the way, I'm playing a big game of life. Almost seems impossible these days, doesn't it? You know, how can people of various cultures get it together and get along? It's just that on a soul level, we are one. And on a soul level, we desire, above and beyond anything else, we desire um, to connect with each other. That's how we're built. And so I want to go back to that raw place where all human beings have in common the desire to connect, the desire to create synergy. And I still have that dream, and it's strong that we will find a way to be of one, even though we're different, which is beautiful, but we'll find a way to synergize the differences so that we add to each other, whether we're different religions, cultures, sexes, anything, that who we're being is going to add to who other people are being. And that really is the most profound game that I know of. And it's beyond politics as I see it. Yeah, I know politics are involved, but imagine creating, joining the human race, okay? Saying goodbye to the fractions and the fallout material and just creating this third entity called the humane race and becoming a member of that. So that's where my head is at. That's where my heart has always been. And I hope that all of you can hear the message, especially at this particular time. And during times of stress like we're experiencing globally, we do want to blank it out and drink it off and whatever defense mechanism, but we've got to feel the pain in our heart to awaken our heart to the deep desire that we all have to be at one with each other. And I know it's possible to find commonality and um, uh, to be consciously concentrated with intention on a third entity. So if you go to my website, healingglobalDisconnect.com, maybe you can go there, Tony, and just read it off so people can understand my message.
So it's global. See the
healingglobalDisconnect.com. Thank you. Go ahead and read that if you don't mind.
Disconnect.com. Let me look here. Healing Global
Disconnect.com.
Okay.
And you'll see there, we as a human race. Let me see if I can pull it up.
Let me see. Global Disconnect.
Oh, time to time, I think I should read it to everybody. Okay, here it is. It looks like that. Okay.
Found
All right.
it
So here it is. As a human race, under the caption, be the cause. Okay. As a human race, we have become fragmented into nations, religions, social classes, politics and races, and more. The fragmentation has resulted in clash and fallout in the form of human atrocities. Although we have been able to soar to unlimited heights in many areas of human endeavor, we have yet to accomplish the final frontier and the most important frontier, to come together as a united humanity. So I'll leave you with that. Put that in your consciousness, your intention. Remember, a humane race. Before you are black, white, whatever religion, whatever sex, whatever politics, number one, you're a human being. So let's begin at least mentally and intentionally to join the human race. And you can only join the human race if you act humanely. If you're not acting humanely, can't be, I'm not giving out the membership. Okay, so thank you very much. Any other comments in the chat room or any other questions
I
before
think
we
that's
sign
it
off?
for tonight.
What's that?
I said, I think that's all for the night.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining in. Good night.